Committee meeting on the 12th of March 2024. Item number 1, apologies and changes in membership. I've had 2 apologies, one from Councillor Mosdell and one from Councillor Lever. Those are the only ones we've received, I think. Yeah. Item number 2, minutes. We've got 3 sets of minutes from our 3 February committee meetings. Starting with the first, 6th of February 2024, do I have a proposer that they are accurate? A Councillor Quirk and a seconder, Councillor Cook. All those in favour? So I will sign those. The meeting the 12th of February 2024, do I have a proposer those minutes are accurate? Councillor Redrup, a seconder, Councillor Quirk. All those in favour? In which case I'll sign those. And the meeting of the 27th of February 2024, do I have a proposer those minutes are accurate? Councillor Quirk, again, seconder. Councillor Love, all those in favour? Right, I'll sign those 3 sets of minutes. Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any?
Chair, I should declare an interest that I'm the item regarding Yarmouth School. I'm the ward councillor for Yarmouth, and I'm also on the Yarmouth Town Council. But on the Yarmouth Town Council, who had put in a bid.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. I should have probably said further up the agenda, actually. I'm aware that Councillor Brodie's time is limited this evening, and I want to ensure that he's here for item number 10, which is the future governance item. So I propose to bring that straight in after the committee work plan, as effectively the new item number 7. Public question time. There's no one in the gallery. We've had 1 written question relating to bids for Yarmouth Primary School, and there is a written response here. Given that the Nicholas Fryatt of Freshwater is not in the gallery, I don't propose to read that out, but it will go to him and of course be published in the normal way. Item number 5, progress update, page 39. I don't think Councillor Jones-Evans isn't here to tell me how they're pressing ahead with great speed doing the heads of terms over the Kingston Marine site. My question was going to be, does she think 15 months is acceptable, and at what point do we decide perhaps we might need to go back out to tender? But she's not here.
As to if anyone is able to give us an update if any progress has been made. Oh,
Councillor Jones-Evans, you arrived just in time. Yes. So an update on the heads of terms over the Kingston Marine site. I think you've possibly been quoted in public as saying it's pressing ahead.
Meetings with them recently, and yeah, things are really going well. So hopefully have some more substantive news very soon.
Thank you.
Roger, I can't give any more details. I would if I could. But please be reassured that officers and I are working with them to bring it to the natural conclusion that we all want.
And the leisure centres review from January 2023, do we have any
yes,
detail on that?
Some members will be aware that we've had an officer off for a while, and they are returning, I think it's this week, on a part-time basis, so we'll be able to start catching up on some of the work. I think you appreciate the teams have been rather since reorganisation rather challenged in terms of numbers and resources, so yeah, we'll get back on track with that for you.
Moving on to the forward plan and the committee's work plan. So we've got one more meeting before annual council in May. And we've got a fairly full agenda for that. So we're likely to be looking again at future governance. Well, I won't read it out. It's all there for you. I think there's one thing we need to agree for the June agenda. Of course, if there's still a corporate scrutiny committee in June, is the cross-Solent transport scoping document, which is just behind the work plan at page 63. So that was circulated to the committee on email. I think Councillor Love, you gave some feedback which has been incorporated. So I need the committee to agree that scoping document for a report and agenda item in June. Councillor Quirk proposes, are we all happy with that scoping document? We've got some nods. Councillor Love.
I was just wondering whether if we ought to add something in there about scoping the financial organisations and can't quite find the right word. I was talking about the benefits that those organisations might receive from government in terms of what funding that they receive, or benefits in terms of tax relief, etc. Because I think that that's important to understand in the wider context of its operational commitment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what.
I know that's a difficult one for us to actually attain that, but what I'm trying to get at is that we need to look at why the service operates as it does, and what are the implications behind that in terms of its finances, kind of. And that I wouldn't just be applying that to Red Funnel, by the way. It's not fair to just apply it to one company. That's all companies.
Yeah, I wonder whether that's slightly outside the scope of what we're doing, but it could be captured in a number of these questions, I suppose. Can we just minute that as something to try and capture in the report? Because of course this isn't the report. This is just the scoping document.
Scoping,
Yeah. If you're happy for us to capture that in the minutes, Councillor Love.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Nods all round. Thank you. So unless there's anything else on the forward plan, there's nothing I can see. We'll move on to item number 10, taken out of order. Future governance, to consider an update on progress regarding the potential for the Isle of Wight Council to move to a committee system of governance. So you've got a report here at page 531. There was also a paper that's come out with full council papers today that was published online. I've managed to have a read of that. It gives a little more detail, which is helpful. But before we dive in, I wonder whether I might hand over to the chair of the working group, Councillor Brodie, whether you want to give us any opening remarks. Don't feel you have to, but there's the opportunity there.
Just, yeah, there it is. Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you, Chair. I won't say too much other than, yes, I chair the working group that's been in place since August, I think it was, that we first started to convene the working group. You know, what you'll hear from me is effectively my personal view, because there are 10 people on that working group from all the groups of the council, all of whom have participated. And I have to say it's been a very united group, bar one councillor. 9 of those councillors have taken a view, as you saw at January's full council, that this council should move to a committee form of governance as soon as possible, preferably from May of this year, the annual meeting. In January, we were required to have a report to go to the Marshfield Council to give a progress report. That is going to the Audit and Governance Report Committee next Monday and to full council next Wednesday. I did note that it's item 10 on the full council agenda next Wednesday, and we also have the draft island planning strategy. So whether we actually get to it is a moot point, to be frank. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment. The working group effectively operates as a member review board at the moment. Officers of this council and a couple of people, external people who are experienced in this area, are assisting us, who are largely based in Southampton. We've got a very important meeting on that, to pursue that on Thursday. But essentially, we're content with what's happening so far. In terms of the timetabling, you've got all that in your report. We're still adhering to that. Ultimately, a decision will be taken to a full council. We anticipate that being on the 1st of May. At that point, the councillors, members of this authority, will all be able to make a decision, firstly, whether they want to do it, and secondly, when they want to do it. But I don't think I need to say any more than that, Chair, but I'm happy to answer any questions if they're not already covered in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. That's helpful. And I think particularly on the point that it looks like on the 1st of May, we're going to be asked effectively 2 questions. Do we want it? And if yes, when? And the when seems to be an option between, and it has to be an annual council. It's either an annual council in May 2024, May of this year, or May of the following year. That would be the question. Yeah. So opening it up to the committee, there's clearly various elements to this. One is timing. Another is, I probably want to avoid too much of a debate about the merits of a committee system as opposed to a cabinet system, albeit I don't want to shut debate down. And also there may be views on some of the detail within the committee proposals. So we've seen there is suggested as 5 committees to replace what's effectively the cabinet, with the leader being the chair of the Finance and Policy Committee. 9 meetings a year, I think, for that committee, and 4 for the others, and 5 for full council. I open it up to the committee. Councillor Coyle.
I think Jeff summed it up that we had near unanimity in the group in terms of moving to the committee system, and near unanimity in the group to do it at the earliest possible opportunity, and that we all saw that as being May of this year. But you've got to be realistic and look at what is possible. But it appears to be possible, and it appears from our external consultants' advice that it is possible. I don't think everyone agrees with every detail of what's in the report. This is where we are now, but there are things that we are still discussing. But you know, we will. I don't think it will stop us getting to a consensus around the time that this is going to full council.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I've got lots and lots of questions around it. And it's really difficult to know kind of where to start. One thing that I would say is that the one thing that I know for certain is that there's no doubt whatsoever, or that I understand Councillor Brodie's motivations for being a lead in this, because he has always said that he wanted a committee system. But I do actually think that some of the motivation by some of the other political groups is not actually where it should be. Now, I actually think, my feeling is that I would like to try a committee system. That is my feeling. A matter of timing and how we get there is the issue. So without talking about any of the detail of the actual, you know, what a committee system looks like, I've been clear right from the beginning of this process myself that I wanted to see a full public consultation, not a part consultation, not with councillors, but with the full community. And I don't see that from within the information here. So one of my things that I'm saying is that there isn't yet sufficient information within the documentations that we have received to make a proper informed decision about whether this is a good or bad thing or a difficult thing or whatever. There just isn't enough information there yet. And that's everything from, if you like, the staffing impact, the cost impact, what are the pros and cons, whether if we've been asked as whether if we can actually resource it ourselves as councillors. So there's a definite void of information there at this point. So my feeling is that we are speedily rushing towards something, making decisions without having all of the information there. I kind of guess I relate that to, you know, we're kind of being asked, if you like, to buy a new Rolls Royce. Council's been asked to buy a new Rolls Royce, except we don't know what the interior looks like. We don't know if it's got super duper hi-fis, heated chairs, or what even colour it is. But we know it's a nice, sparkling, attractive model. And we want to trade that for our Robin Reliant. Okay, that's what we want to trade it for. But our Robin Reliant works pretty well, I think. It works, we know its details, we've got used to its operations. But before we make a decision, we should always know what is in the interior of that vehicle. What is it worth doing? And will the community support it? Okay. Now, I haven't seen anything yet, and this is the bit that kind of upsets me really, is I want to know that this is going to be a beneficial system to the people of the Isle of Wight, not to us. It might make things easier in terms of how we operate, but I want to know that this system is actually going to benefit and have some examples of how it will benefit the people of this island, because otherwise it's kind of a self-serving agenda. And the other, and now at the risk of being pulled out and called out, I'm going to say it anyway. The fact is, from my view, I remember having conversations with Dave Stewart about committee systems. Dave Stewart said there's no way that we would ever do this. And what I'm kind of saying is that's why I say I understand Jeff Brodie's motivations in this, because actually he's always wanted this. He's doing it because he believes it's the right thing. Now he's got to carry the rest of us along with that, and that's important. I'm saying that I'm willing to be carried along as long as I've got the detail, as long as I've got the data to be able to make an informed, properly informed choice. And what I'm saying is the only benefactors of this are actually the larger political groups. So effectively, what we will see is those larger groups with the most amount of members will run the council. And so if we introduce this now, we will effectively hand the control of this council to the Conservative Party. That's what we will do. Now, what I'm saying is that if we were doing this for the right reasons, we will be doing it for the benefit of the people of the Isle of Wight. And I'm not sure, in my mind, that we are doing this for the right reasons, because I've heard Conservatives before previously, and I'm not having a go at the Conservative Party, I'm just relaying what I've seen, saying we wouldn't do the Conservative, you know, we wouldn't want a committee system. And so I'm feeling that people are doing this for the wrong reason, because the outcome of the next general election might or might not mean that we've got a hung council for the next 5 years, and it might be to the benefit of the largest group to have this as a way forward using committee. But the point is, we're stuck with this system once we make a decision for 5 years. Those are the rules. We can't revisit it. We can't change it. And what I'm beginning to feel, and I'm hoping that Mr. Brodie will give me some reassurance here, is that actually what we're trying to do is fit the system to our council, rather than a council developing something which is actually fit for purpose for the people. And it feels like it's very self-serving. So I'm saying that, you know, I mean, if the Liberals vote with this, they will be effectively, assuming that the independents vote against it, handing the administration of this council to the Conservatives, because they are the largest group. They will have the largest number on all of these committees. Now, Councillor Garrett said, when the vote of confidence came, he did not believe that the people of this island wanted a Conservative administration at that time. That's what he said. And I'm saying, effectively, that's exactly what this will do. We've got one more year of this current administration. And I feel that too many things, so that's my political point, right? Okay, but I feel that this whole process is being rushed. So timing is critical. It's absolutely critical. Before I will vote for this in a wider context, I want to see a full financial risk assessment, because the people of this island will not wear a new system which costs, and none of us know this, so I'm making this figure up, it could be a zero implication cost to this council, but it could be, knowing that we've already spent £9,000 on one consultant for one question, to implement a committee system. It could have huge implications. And I note that you've actually said that we've got consultants employed to give advice. I don't know who's agreed to that finance, because in actual fact, only last week we set a budget where there was no money allocation whatsoever set aside for a new committee system. And that worries me, because there will be financial costs, there will be staffing issues. Has anybody asked our staff in the wider context, is this doable in the time?
Okay.
So I know I'm going on and on, but I think there's lots and lots and lots of questions. And I don't think that those questions can be answered. What I don't want is a rushed report with half-baked questions when this is the biggest political change that this island has faced in many, many years with the committee system.
Councillor,
So
I'm
I
going to
would like to see it deferred until 2025.
bring Councillor Brodie in.
Well, all I would say to Councillor Love, I think everything he said is a little premature. I'll answer a number of the issues. It won't take as long. Motivation of all the groups. As I said, every group is represented. You are, Councillor Love, a member of the Alliance group. Of your 3 members, 2 of them supported the recommendations that we're pursuing. 2 of them. I'm sure you know who they are, because I've asked them to report back to the groups on a regular basis. 1 doesn't. They abstained on it, but 2 of them have supported it. So that's the first thing. If there is a motivation, a political motivation, you're the one who's talking about it. I'm not. I would say to you that I have no motivation for this whatsoever. I think you recognise this.
I have.
I believe, but I didn't interrupt you. I believe that a cabinet form of governance of local authorities was a major mistake in 2001. I was active in public service as a community activist in 2001 and before. I've understood local government for a long time. I have seen cabinet form of governance be a form of dictatorship. And frankly, the last 3 years, to have a cabinet of 8 members of a group of now 13 members, 1/3 of the council, is not democracy. And it seems to me that everything you're saying is about power over democracy. I've reversed that. I'm in favour of democracy over power. Secondly, public consultation. If you'd read all the papers, you will see there's a communication strategy. This is being dealt with. Once we get past full council next week, provided we agree to continue pursuing this, then we'll go into a full public consultation period. That's all outlined in the papers that have been sent to you. You're not being asked to make a decision to next week. It's purely a progress report. You will be asked to make a decision on a report that will be presented to you probably on the 1st of May at an extraordinary council, at which point you can make your decision, I can make my decision. I will say to you, Councillor Love, that I'm not guaranteed to vote for it if I'm not happy with the report. I'm also, if I do favour of it, I recognise that rushing into May this year at a time when we possibly could have a general election on the 2nd of May, and I haven't ruled that out yet, would mean it would have to be delayed anyway. So I'm realistic about this. The reason that the majority of us want to pursue this is because this council is failing, in our view. A majority of us believe that. Is believing because you've got 13 people running a dictatorship of the 39. They have no mandate whatsoever. You say that if you move to a committee system, you're handing control to the largest group. I remind you, the Conservative group has 16 members out of 39. My basic arithmetic tells me that 16 is not a majority. So I don't know how you can say that the Conservatives would have a majority on the committees that we propose. Now, will you not interrupt me, please? The largest group, maybe so. A majority of this council is 20, not 16. So I think you need to do your arithmetic.
No, I don't.
And finally, I would just say the people will make their own decision. There is a progress report. I think it's premature questioning. At the end of the day, all I'm articulating is my own views, but I think I represent a majority of the people who are on that working group, who understand what has happened over the recent years. 5 years, yes. This is probably the best time to do it. The best time with 1 year of this council left, and then to tie the hands of the next council. I don't know what the next election results will be. I won't be here because I'm retiring. You know, so it's of no interest to me what the well, it will. Obviously, I want to see a certain result of the next election, next local elections, but I won't be part and parcel of it. There is no gain for me in this whatsoever. What I would say to you, Councillor Love, is just bide your time. I think I can predict here and now that you will vote against it because you've said what you've said repeatedly. However, a majority of people who speak to me across all groups favour a move to a committee system. And there's a man on the left of me, a leader of the council, who stood on an election manifesto in 2013 to revert to this. His deputy did exactly the same. Councillor Fuller over there, Councillor Bacon, all stood on a manifesto to do that in 2013, but they didn't deliver. This is the opportunity for those independents of the Alliance who used to favour it to deliver at this time with 1 year left on this council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. I've got a few comments as well. Yeah, I want to avoid it being an exchange. I will let you come back, Councillor Love, but I want to avoid it being an exchange between two people. So I'm going to ask you to do, Councillor Love, is add some comments. I think I'll add some of my own. If there are any other comments, and then maybe we'll come back to Councillor Brodie to round a few of them up. And Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, if you might, can I ask a question off the committee? If I ask their questions, that'd be all right.
Of course you can.
Thank you.
Councillor Love.
Thank you. I made a clear statement that I am in favour of a committee system. I'm questioning the timing and the background to it. That's what, and the detail that goes into it. That's what I'm questioning and rushing forward. And yes, power does lie with the people. So, but if we're really honest about it, this would not have happened if it had been the Conservatives sat in this position, because they would be doing exactly what I'm suggesting, which is that it is about power. They have never supported you before in this, Councillor Brodie, when they've had the opportunity. And it's not just about the last 3 years, as you point out. It's actually been a committee system for a significant point of time. My point is, I want the evidence in front of me, absolutely in front of me, that all the T's and dots and I's have been crossed before making a decision. And that is the important thing. And I don't think that there is time to do that between now and the 1st of May. It is being rushed, and that will result in all kinds of risks and dangers. And I won't say any more about it.
I'll just come to Councillor Quirk and then Councillor Jones-Evans.
Councillor Love always puts it political and tries to score political points. The cabinet system is a Labour policy.
You were against it.
No, I've put pros and cons. It's a Labour policy, which we've supported, but it works well if you've got a majority. It doesn't work well if you've got a hung council. There's a good chance that we might have a hung council again next time. So it's a good way of working. If you've got an overwhelming majority, yes, it's much simpler just to have a cabinet system, because whatever happens, even in a committee system, you've got the numbers.
It's nice that
but
you've
this
seen the
means
light
it's
after all these
in
years.
the open. That is one of the things
You've
that
always
has
been
been
the opposite.
one of the things that has been lacking. Was probably lacking under the Conservative administration, and is in Trump's now, is actual transparency, and everything is done in secret. And with a committee system, at least you can see what's going on.
No, well, because you were the ones that.
Councillor Cook. I think you had your hand up.
Give me the floor.
Councillor Quirk,
You
Councillor
give me
Cook
the-
speaking, and Councillor Love. Councillor
Not give me
Cook.
the floating bridge report because I wasn't enough you.
Councillor Love, can I ask that we leave the floating bridge to the appropriate agenda item? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. So obvious question from an iWalks perspective is I'd like to ask Councillor Brodie if any consideration has been given to iWalk representation on this committee system, because it'd be a shame to go backwards on that front.
Councillor Brodie.
There are no details. I think some members of the committee are failing to understand it's a progress report. There will be a final report in terms of town and community and parish councils. It is planned to have a full consultation with them towards the end of this month and in early April, 2 meeting schedule. We also, for Councillor Love's benefit, there will be a public engagement event as well. That's already been prepared for after Easter. You know, that we are going to have if he'd read the communication strategy with the papers, he would know that that's in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jones Evans, is it a question you wanted to ask?
If I could just ask a question, or member of the council, but obviously committee goes first.
Please do.
Oh, thank you. It is a couple of things. Again, my comments, questions are all about the process. It's not about the principle. Just want to make that absolutely clear. I've done a bit of research on this, and I know there's been two. In fact, I don't know if other members have brought this up. Maybe they have. I know there's two councils that have recently gone through or going through a transition from one to the other, from cabinet to committee, and they've taken over a year to get all of the background information before an informed decision was made. And we're still lacking, as Councillor Brodie said, we're still lacking a lot of the detail here. And I think that's what does concern me. There's also a few, you know, actually sort of, it makes me chuckle in a way, because I never hear of pragmatism and sort of risk talked about so much in a council report as this, where it seems to be okay, this amount of risk is all right, and we'll be pragmatic. We know we're not going to have all the answers, but we'll sort that out later. But I don't understand what that sorting out later is going to impact on delivering our council services. I mean, you look at that risk report at the bottom of the full council report, it doesn't talk about risk to the council, risk to projects, maybe time-bound projects that need to be delivered. None of that nuts and bolts of how we make decisions and how we deliver projects. You know, we've got some very important projects. We've obviously got the 2 years time, we've got to have finished the Greenway. We've also got the East Cowes levelling up, which is due to finish. It's about a year, I think, to go on that. So there's all this work that goes on. I look at these committees, and you've got one committee here, which is economy and transport and infrastructure. And I know all the work that goes on is in you know, as cabinet members will know how much work you do. You work, it's a full-time job, it's a lot of work to do. So I'm looking at that, well, how can that committee do all the work of a cabinet member? Then I look at the Policy, Finance and Resource Committee and see they meet more often, and you've got the committee chairs in that. I go, well, actually, that's the cabinet, isn't it, in a way? So I'm still really confused about how this is actually really going to work. And I think consultation, a full consultation, once we've got all the understanding, the nuts and bolts, how it's going to work, how are we going to make decisions? Because I'm thinking, if these committees are only meeting 4 times a year, there's going to be more delegated decisions than ever, and that is not why a lot of people want us to change to a committee system. I say, you know, I'm ambivalent about it. You know, I'd like to show me if it's better, and I'm there. You know, I really don't mind, but what I do mind is the way this council works, the way we deliver, the way we support our staff as well, because we don't know what impact this has on staff as well, doing all these extra papers and knowing how they're going to interact with committee chairs. Our committee chairs is to be the cabinet member. Is that relationship is going to work still? I don't know. So there's lots of questions for me, and I would much rather that we had all the information and then went out to a wider consultation, including our staff. I want to see the risks. In fact, I've already asked the chief executive and Mr. Rowan. I want to see risk register for all of the projects, some of the ones I just mentioned, because this is important stuff. If we don't deliver, it affects us getting more money from government for more projects. So this is real serious stuff. It's about the future of the Isle of Wight. So that's all I'm saying. I want to see the detail. I don't want to be talked about. Let's be pragmatic, and we'll worry about that later. Let's see what we're going into, and everyone can vote. Go in there with open eyes, but we take everyone with us. We take our staff and we take the Isle of Wight, and we can move forward. So I think it's really important that we need to know this is going to be delivering for the island.
Thank you. I might take that opportunity, Councillor Jones-Evans, just to add a couple of thoughts of my own, because they're not dissimilar to yours. I think it'd be remiss of the committee not to comment on the element of risk that's identified in the report. In places I think it defines in a risk register high risk in the cabinet report. And it also says, and I quote, "A change to a committee system will introduce a system of decision making that will be new to many councillors and officers. There is a likelihood that sufficient knowledge and experience cannot be gained by the point of implementation, and there's a potential for mistakes to be made. There will be a learning experience in which there will need to be a tolerance of potential unintended mistakes to be made." Councillor Brodie, I do wonder whether we might be at a point in the beginning of May, and I accept there's some time to go there, where it's simply not possible to implement it within 2 weeks from that decision date, and that May 2025 might be more prudent.
But I hear what you're saying, but as I say, you haven't got anything in front of you yet. I think this is a premature scrutiny because you haven't got any of the details. I continue to believe it's deliverable. I am advised by the Chief Executive and other officers that it is deliverable if you want to do it. It's interesting that one of the criticisms of local government is always that everything takes forever. I think this can happen quickly because it's the right thing to do if members want to do it. But that'll be down to democracy. That will be down to the 39 members of this council on or around the 1st of May making a decision. Do they want to do this? And when do they want to do it? Now, I have a view that if it's deliverable and there isn't a general election, you know, that we should go for this year, if at all possible. It's the right time to do it. This council doesn't have a majority. It's far from it, not even close to having a majority. Let's go for it. Let's see how a committee system works over a 5-year period. You can then revert if you wish at that point, but give it a go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a number of others to bring in, but just while you reference the detail, there are some details there that I think give me concern. I think Councillor Jones-Evans referred to it, and that's the frequency with which these committees meet. I do worry that, for example, adult social care, we currently have a scrutiny committee that meets 4 times a year and a cabinet member. And now we're looking at a new committee that will do both those functions, but only meet 4 times a year. So in my view, from what I've read so far, I'd urge your group to go back and have a look at increasing the number of committee meetings and also full council meetings. I don't see a rationale particularly for reducing the number of full council meetings, which I think others were critical of prior to 2021 when they were reduced at that time. To further reduce them, I think.
If I could just quickly respond. Yeah, I mean, as I say, nothing's definitive yet. We're still working on it. The report will be available late April. You know, the number of meetings, you know, that is something that can be looked at. Number of full councils, we currently have 6. The original proposal was 4, you know, but our advice was that the business of this local authority could be done in 5.
Thank you. I might ask the committee at the end of this session to see whether it would be prepared to make that as a recommendation, that the subgroup goes away and has a look at increasing the number of committee meetings. Councillor Spink, then Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I support in principle moving to a committee system. I think the public, if one looks at the various online comments of the public and also speaks to people, they're tired of party politics in local government. And I'm afraid this sort of adversarial us against them system only contributes to that. I share the overall concern that we need more detail, but as Councillor Brodie says, that is coming. And if by the time May comes, I don't feel that there is enough detail, then I won't vote for it. And I think to start, as it were, putting the brakes on it now would be far too early, and as Councillor Brodie has said, would be premature. Let's keep an open mind. The principle is good. Let's keep an open mind as to whether or not we can all be satisfied with the detail, and voting for it if we can be in May, and against it if we're not satisfied with the detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to comment. And I do so with two hats on, I suppose. I'm Cabinet Member for Democratic Services, but also I'm the mystery member of the Future Governance Committee who's been referred to as not wholly in favour. So I think I can probably speak with that hat on as well. There is plainly a view in favour of doing this. I'm very glad it's been separated out into two questions, because there is a majority clearly for a committee system, and that's good and that's fine, that's great. It's going to happen for whatever reason. People might be voting for it. I hear what Councillor Love says with interest. But the concern has to be with timescale, and where there are references to unanimity in the group. Yes, I think there's unanimity about a committee system, but there is not unanimity about timescale. And I think that is wider than one member. We've had no separate vote in that group taking those two issues apart. I think it's very useful to separate out, as I say, the substance and the process. The concerns plainly, and they've been set out here by a few speakers, are being too quickly. And I think those who are expressing concerns, there's a feeling that much is being done to fit the timescale rather than to identify what is going to work best. It must be said that in the working group, I know Jeff quite rightly says that an argument is, well, we can't make a decision yet because we haven't got details, and details will be forthcoming. We have only got 3 or 4 weeks for those details to come. But what must be said is that actually a lot has been deferred. It has been said a number of times at the governance working group, well, that can be looked at after May. That worries me. So the final report we will get, yes, it will obviously have more detail, but there are some things we simply won't get because those points have been deferred. That, I must say, is a point of concern. The other point of concern is, and again, it's been alluded to by Councillor Love, we know nothing about the financial implication yet. That simply hasn't come up. Again, details will be forthcoming, but to be 3 to 4 weeks away from publication of a final report on which a decision could be made without knowing the finances, and given the state of council finances at the moment, I think must be identified as a serious risk and concern. So just to summarise my view, Councillor Love used the car analogy earlier and referred to the interior of the car. I'm not sure it's so much the interior as the engine we're worried about. We might be getting this Rolls-Royce, but it might have a Skoda engine in it, is what I'm concerned. And I think there's need to pause, think about implementation. We're going to do this, it's plain, but it would seem prudent, wise, both financially and in terms of knowing what we're getting into, to look at May 25 as the implementation date.
Thank you. Just to be clear, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, it's possible to make a binding decision that this has to happen on the 1st of May. It's possible to do that with an implementation date that could be May 2025, or it could be May 2024. So it can be got over the line in terms of a binding decision made on the 1st of May, but you could have as much as a year implementation if the council wanted to. I think on the finance points you make, Councillor Bacon, my slight reading and concern was that's why the committees aren't meeting very frequently, is to keeping costs down. And that worries me slightly, but we've made the point on frequency of meetings. Councillor Quirk.
Just one thing in terms of the committees. What we have currently within our cabinet system is regeneration. And I think regeneration should actually appear in one of the committee titles.
Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. My question was just a clarification on something. So the engagement dates for the public and the town parish councils are on the 27th of March and the 4th of April. Will they be getting the same detail that we have now, or will there be more detail for them to look at? And if it's the same as now, will there be another opportunity with more detail? Thank you.
There will be more detail available, Councillor Redrup, for those meetings. There may be things to add as a result of that, because otherwise there's no point in doing a consultation. And I think I'm often worried on this local authority that consultation doesn't really mean consultation. I hope that it is. The thing that I think councillors need to remember, of course, is that contrary to Councillor Love's earlier assertions, I think you'll find that the majority of the public think this is an arcane subject. All they really care about is the delivery of public services as cheaply as possible. That's sadly the way it is. I mean, I can get very excited about how you govern a council. I'm sure many of us can, but the vast majority of people, frankly, don't care. Thank you. Well, can I just say one other thing? In terms of when the final report would be published, it would actually be 6 weeks today. Now, of course, there'd be preparation time, etc. But I would hope we've probably got about 4 weeks at the moment. So around about the 9th of April, we will start to be putting together the report. So yes, it's starting to draw to a close now. As I said in my first remarks, we have an important meeting of the review board on Thursday, I think it is. Yes, it is Thursday the 14th, you know, with the consultants and with senior officers to reflect on a lot of the questions that are being raised now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Love and then Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you for letting me come back. I just need to make, I have my own way of describing things. It's my particular way of describing. I've made it really clear at the beginning. I'm not against the committee system. I'm against the timeframes and making sure that we've got the proper due diligence in place and that we've had time to consider it. So taking the point of there's only a few weeks left, we're being asked to make a big decision and we've only got 2 weeks left. There's no time for reflection. Proper reflection and proper debate and discussion about what that means in terms of the risks. That's my point in terms of rushing forward. And that's why I believe that 2025 would be a much better, more measured framework to put it in. I'm a bit disappointed, Jeff, that you were a bit dismissive there of the general public not really caring how we do this. I mean, first of all, we haven't asked them. And actually, there was quite a lot of people out there who are concerned about if this is going to cost, and we don't know any prices, £500,000 more. And it might not. It might be a fiver more. I don't know. But so far, we've already spent on consultants, which you've talked about, which I have no idea how much those have cost, and the £9,000 that cost for just one question to be asked at council for one piece of information, plus all of the work that all of the officers are doing now. At a time of austerity where things are really difficult, people don't want us to be spending huge amounts of money reorganising a council when people's jobs are at risk, when that public money could go into other things. That's a point. I don't think that's right for now, but that's just an opinion. And you are right, it will be the majority who decide what happens. And I'm just one voice. And yes, I am a bit political. That's what I was elected for, as all of you were. You were all elected to be politicians, and the word is politics. But due diligence, I want to ensure that due diligence is done here, and I don't believe it can be done between now and then because of all of the things that you've raised. I think we are rushing, and when we rush, we make mistakes, and those mistakes are not retrievable. Remember, it cannot be reversed once we make this decision. Give ourselves a year in which to reflect, think about how much it's costing, think about all of the implications, getting the committees right. As the former cabinet member for adult social care, the programme that's suggested is nonsense. I had to meet weekly, absolutely weekly or bi-weekly with my director in order to deal with all of the really difficult issues that face this 4 times a year. It will collapse, will adult social care, or we will have to give an officer permission to implement delegated decisions, which will take power away from the public, because we make decisions on behalf of the public. So that's another area that we need to think about. You can't meet 4 times a year. If you're not meeting as a chair once a week with your director, it ain't gonna happen. We want to go forward. So committee systems, committee systems. We vote online, we use technology to our advantage, we really go forward, we drive a positive agenda forward. That sounds great to me. Committee systems, they were good 20 years ago, 30 years ago, before we had people ringing up and saying, can you do this? And internet, can you do that? Tomorrow, by the way, because the gas price goes up if you don't make a decision tomorrow, says the gas people to the cabinet member, who then has to go to a committee now, who'll make a decision 3 months later, by which time that deal's gone and all the rest. Those are the decisions. If we're having a committee system, it has to be absolutely fit for purpose. It has to be fast thinking, fast moving and quick. And I think 4 meetings a year, who's making this kind of ridiculous suggestion?
Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Jones-Evans, if we could keep comments now to sort of new ground, because I think we'll be able to sum up. Yeah, Councillor Brodie.
Like that, any details whatsoever, Councillor Love has spent most of this meeting scaremongering about things that aren't being presented to next Wednesday.
Oh, told the truth.
You're scrutinising something
That's what we're here
that is going for a progress report, no particular decision, for a progress report on where we are. I have sat in that chair on 2 occasions in the past, and not once did I ever allow things that were going to full council to be scrutinised. I'm fascinated that you've got the draft island planning strategy on your agenda. What justice can you do to that 200-page document in a meeting that we'll have to finish within 3 hours? Sorry, Council Chair, it's a bit of a nonsense, to be frank. I'm being asked questions about things that I haven't got the details for. I mean, I can agree to come along, but I object to Councillor Love, who claims to be in favour of this, who was continually scaremongered about things. He's plucked figures out of the air that I've never heard of. £9,000. What a load of nonsense.
That's what it
Secondly, do you mind not shouting across me in terms of the public questions? A media release was issued by the Media and Communications team in September regarding what was happening. Okay, there's an email address. We had very little response to that. Similarly, a month ago, a media release was issued as well. One is in preparation at the moment. This is an arcane subject. It is not it's not a sexy issue. To the contrary, the people of Calwood Loves Ward might all be very excited about this. This is not. I believe that in terms of delivering services, service committees are better than some of the cabinet members I've seen over my 19 years on this council. And the majority of them have been pretty rubbish, to be frank. In the past, I've seen committee chairs and vice chairs work together on service committees very effectively indeed. And I will just refer one more thing. This council, and he was no political ally of mine, has only, in my view, this council has only ever had one decent leader, and that was Maurice Barton. He ran a committee system, quite happily, and it was an effective council. Sadly, it was a Liberal Democrat council. You know what my political favouritism is, but he ran it perfectly well. I said it last July when everybody supported that was looking into this. But finally, I would just say, please do not scaremonger. I'm happy to debate this anytime you want. That's where I expect to do it next Wednesday, and particularly on the May the 1st. and ultimately on at the annual council if we decide to go ahead then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Jones-Evans, is it new ground? I don't want to go over.
I was just trying to get to a point of what recommendations you're thinking of putting forward, because I
am
think
at that point, Councillor
great.
Jones-Evans.
So if I can just say one little thing, then I just think it's the risk. I think is what I'm hoping is going to come out of this, the extra work they're doing. And I would like to see the risk widen to look at the running of the council rather than just this risk report on getting this particular piece of work through. So I think that's really, really important. And just a question, actually, do you know who is going to have final sign off of this report? They think it's fit for purpose?
Yeah, this is something I discussed with Mr. Thorne just before the meeting, is how the final text comes into being and presented on the 1st of May. I guess it's a product of further discussions and negotiations, and it's a text that clearly needs to command the majority's support of the council if it's going to be approved. So there's an incentive there behind Councillor Brodie and the committee to present something that is acceptable. In terms of response from this committee, if I can sum up and then get approval from the committee, and I'm sure you'll tell me if you don't agree. I think it would be remiss for us not to note the risk referred to in the report. It's there in black and white. It's a report to this committee, and would ask that the committee and the Deputy Monitoring Officer have due regard to the risk around speedy implementation in particular, and that it can provide further detail in its next update about that risk. And of course, you'll be a little further down the track, so I presume you'll be in a better position to know whether speedy implementation is still realistic or not. Dealing with finances, I think we would definitely like to see some more detail on the financial analysis. It's my own view that we shouldn't be strung to every single pound of expenditure in order to avoid more frequent meetings. So I'm hoping the committee will nod that our comments are we'd like to see more frequent meetings of those service committees. I think 4 a year for 3 of them definitely feels like not enough when it's replacing cabinet that meets every month and corporate scrutiny that meets every month. Is that sensible feedback? I'm seeing nods. I think also particular due regard to the impact on staff, and consult with those who may be looking at a very different job after May if this goes through. Was there anything else that we wanted to capture? Councillor Redrup.
I just wanted to say about what Councillor Quirk said about the naming regeneration and also what Councillor Cook said about iWalk as well. Those were the other 2 points.
Yeah, thank you. And there's something we haven't discussed, but it's been put to me by somebody not at this meeting, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Councillor Brodie is question mark about whether there's sufficient agreement over whether the role of leader is also the chair of the Finance and Policy Committee, whether that's the same person. Because I understand there might not be agreement over that, but I think that's something for outside the room as part of your development of a more detailed paper. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Just one more thing on the risk. You very eloquently spoke about the risks that are going forward inherent. That it was in the report that the risks that mistakes will be made potentially while we bed into this system if it's done in such a short period of time. And for me, this is all about process and doing things, in the right way and the right time with getting the right consultation. What do we have an understanding of what measure of risk, what measure of mistakes are going to be allowable? because I remember going back, oh gosh, 2010, you remember, Councillor Brodie, I think there was a mistake made when we paid a company £400,000 extra at the build at Cowes Enterprise College, I think, and that company then had been out of, they'd gone bust. So the mistakes do get made, but I mean, if we make a £400,000 mistake now, that's major problems with our budget. So do we have a sense of what kind of mistakes are going to be allowable and acceptable within this while the system beds in? Because because only because of in my view, rush towards it. And
Yeah,
the
so-
pragmatism they talk.
So I think, as I said, we want more detail on risk as the weeks pass or as the days pass. I think my sort of strongest concern over risk is paragraphs 50 and 51 of the papers to full council that were published today, where it talks about mistakes and risk. And this is risk about timing, about the pace of implementation. We're not talking about the risk of a committee system. We're talking about implementing it in May 2024 as opposed to May 2025. But there are also words in around the risk, and that other local authorities generally take around a year in on pages 536 and 537 of our bundle. But I think what we want to see is as much detail as possible and a frequent update each time you report that risk analysis and understanding will be re-examined and reported on. I want to try and move on, but two very further quick comments from Councillor Spink and Councillor Love.
It may be that you said it, Chair, and I didn't hear it, as it were. I was doing something else, perhaps looking at the papers. But as well as itemising the risks, I think the general feeling of this committee is that it's the right thing to do in principle. And I think that should be noted on the minutes, that the general view is it's the right thing to do in principle. We're just concerned about whether there's time to implement it. And we've now set out the heads that we'd like further information on.
Yes, so speaking personally, I would have liked to have wound back a few months and seen more of an analysis as between cabinet system, hybrid system, committee system. But I agree, it appears that certainly there is a majority that no longer want to see that analysis, that they're satisfied a committee system is a good thing. So without saying this committee is unanimous, I would agree that there's probably comfort with moving to a committee system in principle. Councillor Love.
Yeah, and again, that's a bit of an assumption, because I'm not convinced that I've seen enough analysis to demonstrate, as I said at the beginning, the benefit for the people directly. I would like to see more of that. But if we're going to receive the report, it needs to be received. I mean, this is no mean feat, this, is it, for any of us to receive 5 days before. It needs to come to us in a, that's not a criticism of the officers. I'm just saying it's no mean feat for a substantial document to come to us 5 days before that concerns really quite important things. And I'm sorry, Councillor Brodie, if your superior attitude, you know, if I'm not up to your superior knowledge and learning in this matter after 19 years, you know, clearly you know better than everybody else, and I'm not allowed an opinion.
I think we can let that go, Jeff. That wasn't through the chair. Are we ready to move on? And have we captured that detail of our feedback? Yeah, great, lovely. Thank you very much. Moving on to what was item number 7, pre-decision scrutiny for the island planning strategy. I will ask Mr. Brewer if he wants to, or indeed Mr. Bolter, if they want to set the scene. But what I will say is clearly we're not here to re-scrutinise the entire document. We've done that already, and so has Neighbourhoods and Regen Committee. But it is an opportunity for any final high level comment to go with this as it goes on its journey to full council. So I'd like to keep the reflections as broad and general as possible, rather than delving into individual paragraphs. Don't feel you have to set the scene. No, fine. Okay, let's go straight into it. Councillor Quirk.
Just to note that the scrutiny meeting that we considered previously raised a number of issues, and they've been dealt with to my satisfaction in the amendments that have been made.
Thank you. Councillor Spink.
I don't wish to go through this document in detail, because no doubt that will be done at full council. But I have to say, I don't entirely agree with Councillor Quirk. I think if I could refer you to page 77, I think there are a number of recommendations, a combination of neighbourhood and also full council, which I'm sorry to say, to see that they're not in the draft plan. So item 51, housing company and council-owned housing sites, that seems to me to be the only way forward for this local authority to provide properly social housing for rent, which, although he's departing, is something that Councillor Brodie has championed on many occasions. I think it's a great shame that that strategy is not elevated to our island planning strategy. It deserves to be. It's the most important issue on the housing register, the most important band, and it would take numerous families out of temporary accommodation and should be a planning strategy, in my view, of this council. Time limit over the page, paragraph 53, time limits on finalising legal agreements. And it was suggested that there should be a 6 month limit on the section 106 agreements. One of the main causes, it seems to me, of delay in issuing decision notices is discussion of 106 agreements. I mean, in some cases, it takes over a year to finalise the 106 agreement. And there should be, that hasn't been dealt with adequately, in my view, in the plan, in the draft plan. And I think that some developers do use prevarication in order to extend what effectively the 3-year limit. And I think we should have more concrete proposals along the lines of a time limit unless exceptional circumstances or something like that, special circumstances with a clear definition of what that means, should be in our plan as recommended. I can't remember now because this is a list of both recommendations of neighbourhood and also full council. I don't know which that came from, but it seems to me a sensible proposal. And then I am concerned, I raised this in the leaders meeting, I was deputising for Councillor Jarman. I am concerned, and I raised this at neighbourhoods, that the paragraph in the draft plan that deals with allocated sites, I am extremely concerned that on a literal meaning, a literal reading of that paragraph, it takes away the power of planning committee to determine whether a site is right for development in principle. Now, at the meeting of neighbourhoods, both Mr. Brewer and Mr. Bolter told us that was not the intention. So I asked rhetorically, why can that intention not made clear? This paragraph actually states that planning committee will consider such things as design, etc. It puts a couple of the other, I don't want to go through it in detail, but it puts a couple of other aspects in. And I think people should know, if you have a ward that's got allocated sites, if that paragraph is literally engaged, you will lose, or your planning committee will lose, arguably, the right to say, we object to that, other than on design. And if this council doesn't want that, why is there a resistance to making the section clear? I have never had an answer to that, apart from the fact, well, it is clear, but it's not. So that's that. I have a personal request as well, and that is this, that it's no secret that I've been very supportive of a claim to exceptional circumstances for the island. I think it's an opportunity for the island, as the saying goes, what's not to like. The MPPF has been amended to allow local authorities such as islands with no land bridge and an ageing population to claim exceptional circumstances. What's not to like? The council obtained a legal advice, which I was so concerned by, that my local community has stomped up a considerable amount of money for a rival legal advice, as it were, a second opinion. I've sent out only shortly before this meeting that advice to all members of this committee. That advice is not conclusive because the barrister has recommended a further demographic report because he has systematically, in my view, pulled holes in the demographic report provided by those instructed by this council. Now, he has asked, or he has advised, that when that demographic report is available, he will advise further. My understanding is that he's going to do his best to advise this week, but it's not guaranteed. Life as a barrister isn't like that, and I'm sure everyone knows that. It's not possible. And I would only ask this council to consider this, that if that advice is not available in time for full council meeting, for full council to give careful consideration as to whether or not there should be a short adjournment of the dips, maybe only for a month, and have an extraordinary full council meeting, so that we don't wave goodbye to exceptional circumstances and regret it. And one of the things that this committee's got to do is to consider whether or not to recommend to Cabinet that the matter should go for Regulation 19. Well, if we do recommend that, I would ask, please, that it's perhaps with that caveat that we recommend it, but that there should be further consideration of the situation if the community legal advice is not available. It's going to be available within 1, 2, or possibly 3 weeks. And that type of delay is marginal. There's also we've written, or our MP at my request has written to the Minister of State for Housing, asking for what is in effect the purpose and what are the ramifications and advantages to the island being cited in paragraph 61 of the MPPF, and what are the effects of that. So it does seem to me that it would be helpful to have it from the horse's mouth, namely the Minister of State. The reason that there seems to be some concern is that the drafting of paragraph 61 is not perhaps as clear as it could be. And what I'm trying to do, and what my community is trying to do, is clarify it through further legal advice and, at the end of the day, the Minister of State. And I think to refuse a request for a short adjournment, if that advice isn't available, I emailed the barrister yesterday to ask him, do his best to have it available. But if it's not, I think it's a disservice to the island if we press ahead with the dips. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. I'm minded to come to Councillor Fuller because there's a question there over, is the council or is the cabinet prepared to delay the island planning strategy further if there isn't the clarity there on exceptional circumstances that Councillor Spink's referring to?
Well, all that I was going to say was, I think, what is the outcome that we want from exceptional circumstances? The outcome, quite clearly from Councillor Spink and from others, is to reduce that housing number. That housing number we have reduced from what the standard methodology says is 730 to 453. We have reduced that number. What we wanted to find out when we went out to consultation, and we spoke to Ivan Tennant from Lambert, Smith and Hampton, was what scope is there to use exceptional circumstances with this respect to reduce housing numbers? And he said, well, there is a likelihood, and you can read it for yourself in the report, that the numbers will not only be at 730, they could actually be higher. What we have done is our officers have gone ahead, they've looked at the evidence that we have for the island, and they've managed to reduce that number from 730 to 453. we're seeing what would have to happen is if we do increase the housing number up to 730, we would have to look at our housing allocations, our settlement boundaries again, and we had to rethink how many houses we're going to build. You know, we have managed to suppress that number as far as we possibly can. And I'm listening to Councillor Spink, and again, one of the things that we want is to see that number suppressed to a figure that is right for the island. For the last few years, we have been developing between, or we've had, I'm sure that my officers behind me can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have been looking at 400 to 500 homes built or completions every year. So we've been doing what we're being asked to do. I think what Councillor Spink would like, and I think that there are other people on the island that would like the same, they would like to see that number reduced even further. What I want is, I've spoken to, Councillor Jarman was saying exactly the same things to me in 2022. He was saying, well, there is evidence, that evidence is very clear that we can reduce that number to a much lower level. Well, I questioned Councillor Jarman about this, and I said to Councillor Jarman, tell us who you are talking to legally. This was back in 2022, and we will have this conversation. We can have this conversation with our officers to make sure that number is suppressed. I asked him on 2 occasions. On both occasions, I never got a response back. Again, last year, I asked for support, and I said to Councillor Spink, you know, tell us who your legal advisor is, and we can talk to them. If we have got it wrong, then we can try to redress that. But again, I've not had any response back. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to work with what we're being advised through our members, and we you know. Councillor Spink mentions things about affordable housing. We have policies in this plan for affordable housing. We're doing precisely what councillors want us to do. We have deeper discounts. We've referenced the deeper discounts, and the importance of that is for the island on there. We can't insist on deeper discounts at the moment because we don't have an island plan in place. We're using an old plan with old policies that are out of date. And you know, when you talk to the planning committee and you see the planning committee in action, and they're saying to Ollie and our officers, well, we want to do more. We want to create more affordable housing. How do we go about getting those deeper discounts? How do we go about giving local houses for the local people? How do we make sure we're building the right houses in the right places at the right price for the right people? We can't do that, but this plan sets us on the step to do that. Now, Councillor Spink also mentioned about the Regulation 19 consultation that will take place. If we've got it wrong, and the advice that we're getting from Mr. Bedford, who is our KC, and from Mr. Tennant, who is our demographics expert, there is an opportunity at that stage to go to the planning inspector and say, the council's got it wrong. We have some alternative evidence that we want to supply, and that can be looked at by the planning inspector. That allows that extra consultation to take place. We've had this IPS for several years. There's no reason why people can say that it's being rushed through and it needs to be delayed by another month. Thank you.
May Chair just come back. Councillor Fuller's speech, as it were, is really the sort of speech if I were making an application for this to be adjourned for 6 months or a year. All I'm asking for is time for what's already in hand and paid for, time for a further demographic report and barrister's advice. We've already got one report, which you can all read, which sets out concern over a number of points in Michael Bedford's Casey's report. Now, all I'm asking for is some time for what's in place to be considered, and I don't fully understand the concern of Councillor Fuller, why he's so worried about this coming under public scrutiny. As far as being asked who my legal advice is by Councillor Fuller, I refute that. I've never been asked that by Councillor Fuller. And in addition, until we managed to raise funds, I didn't have any official legal advice. Most of it was my own research, with occasionally people I know who are solicitors chatting to them on the phone. But I had no formal legal advice and no formal legal advisor to give you, Councillor Fuller, had you asked me. And in fact, you did not. So it seems to me that this council is frightened of whatever my community might come up with. And I think that's an appalling position to be in. And I renew my application that in the form that I said. Thank you.
Yeah, so while not disagreeing necessarily with the essence of what Councillor Spink is saying, I want to see whether we can find a majority view or recommendation or consideration of this committee. I think Councillor Spink's view is very, very clear, and I think, and I hope, has been heard. And I will give Councillor Fuller an opportunity to come back on that. But I want to see whether there is a majority committee view, reaction or comment to the island planning strategy. Councillor Love.
Got some sympathy because we're both in the same position. I've just been talking about time in the previous debate and you're talking about time here. I think the thing about time is really quite important, that we do things in a timely way and a sensible way. My concern, Councillor Spinks, is that it has been going on a long time now. And my thoughts are that the longer it goes, the more planning applications that perhaps shouldn't slip through do go through. And that's one of my concerns. So I'm just not quite sure I'm really honest about it. I'm not quite sure what I think at this point in terms of trying to get some consensus, Chair. I think after, I think it's about 7 years that this has all been going on, if not more. It's a bit like the floating bridge. That's 7 years too, by the way. But I think I just want to get it done now. And if there is opportunity, as you've suggested, can you categorically confirm that there's opportunity there, Councillor Fuller, for it to come back and be amended? Then I just want to kind of...
It can't as a matter of law. And James Brewer and Mr. Bolter have, sorry, Chair, but James Brewer and Mr. Bolter have already advised us that if the council wishes to, once it's gone to Regulation 19, to then pursue exceptional circumstances, we would have to go back to the beginning. So Councillor Fuller is, I'm sure it's not intentional, but is misleading the committee on that. And I'm sure Mr. Brewer and Mr. Bolter will support that because I've got it in writing from Mr. Brewer.
I think my understanding is Councillor Fuller is saying there's opportunity to amend during the Regulation 19 process. That's not quite the same thing as saying.
You can't amend to an exceptional circumstances, and I have it in writing.
Sorry, I didn't take it that he was saying amend to exceptional circumstances. I think minor amendments was the suggestion.
It's the officers.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Councillor Fuller and the officers if any or either of them or all of them would like to speak.
What I was suggesting, what I was saying was if you feel that the number is too high, Councillor Spink, there is the opportunity to bring your evidence forward to the inspector to see if that number can be suppressed even lower than the 453. But we need to have the evidence to be able to use that, to take that forward. We've been told previously that the number that we have is too high. And I think at full council, Councillor Jarman was quoted as saying there is plenty of evidence out there to suggest that that number could be lower. And I think I did note what was spoken at full council, and that was one of the arguments about supporting the island planning strategy last time, about ensuring that there was time to make sure we got this information about the exceptional circumstances. But that is another argument.
Can I ask if there's anyone else on the committee who hasn't spoken who has anything to say? I mean, my own view is, for what it's worth, broadly, very, very broadly comfortable with the reduction in housing numbers. My own criticism of the current draft is that there's too much allocation on greenfield land, and there could be and should be greater emphasis on brownfield land, and that would mean removing some greenfield allocations. And for that reason, I will find it very hard to support this current draft. But again, I'm trying to explore if there's any majority view of this committee. Otherwise, it will have to be just individual views of Councillor Spink and I. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Ask a question just as a normal member of the council, because you haven't got many other members of the council here this evening. So I'll take my chance if that's okay, Chair. Yeah, I'm just interested that I mean, how many pages is the draft island plan? Nearly 300, 280, something like that. There's loads in there. I mean, there's a whole section about the economy, which I find particularly interesting, obviously relevant to the work I do on behalf of the island. And I'm just disappointed that everything seems to have boiled down to housing numbers and just housing allocations. And that's fair and that's fine. It's all part of the mix. But there's so much more here. I'd love to hear a broader discussion about how this document can help us achieve what we want for the island and for our residents. So I'd really like to hear a bit more discussion about that. And maybe we may get that at full council, but let's hope so. The other thing that does worry me as a member of this council is the, well, I mean, Councillor Fuller spoke to us, 2 years ago, roughly now. He said, can we have a couple of months delay? Got a few things we'll iron out with other members. Okay, that seems fine. And now we're here 2 years later and we're still asking for delays. And you think within that time we could have maybe ironed out these things. But I'm really concerned about, yes, the demographics giving us higher housing numbers, because I think if I was a betting person, I would say that's definitely, you know, I'll put my money on that, because I am concerned, you know, with our housing situation, it's only getting worse, and with our young people, you know, leaving because, or having as I'm having to put up with, having to live with their parents still, which isn't great for when you've got young people who should be you know, out and about living their lives in their early 20s, shouldn't really ideally be at home with their parents, one would say. And this, of course, the quality of our housing stock is really poor as well. But the other thing does concern me, and it's a budgetary thing, is all of the expense, all the work that has gone in to producing the island plan, all of the research documents. Now, I don't know if we were to start from scratch, because I guess it's a point where some of this research is going to become null and void because it will be out of time. So, I mean, I hazard to guess how much this has cost already. Perhaps you've got an idea on that, but that to me is a real worry too. And I hear you. I mean, I'm part of the planning committee, and I bet you some of the decisions we made just last week maybe would have been different had we had the island plan, and maybe would help people that were part of that decision making process. Anyway, just my observations, but you know, hopefully they're valid. I've been in the council for a long time, and I was here when we did the last island plan, and it is definitely time for a change now, or a fresh one.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. I think the reason that a lot of the good things aren't being talked about is because we've now boiled down to the issues, the problems that some councillors have with it. So I've always made it very clear. I'm grateful to the officers who've been responsible for drafting this, for being very open and very accessible. And I've made my views known over a long period of time now, and I've certainly always been heard, even if the draft isn't where I would like it to be myself. Councillor Spink.
I'd just like to deal with this. The suggestion that the delay that I'm asking for, which is probably for only a week or so after full council, would in some way result in a housing problem and more matters coming before planning committee and having to be granted. There won't even be a planning committee meeting, I don't think, in the next 3 weeks. So all that I'm asking for, and my community is asking for, is firstly, there's a good chance that our advice will be available in time, and then full council can be decided. But if it's not, this committee thinks it's not unreasonable for there to be a short delay for that advice to be obtained. I can see, it seems to me to be a very low ask. Thank you.
So trying to cut through, I think,
Sorry, Chair, I did have a specific question that I asked Councillor Fuller about the cost of the island plan or the report. Is that okay to have that response? Is that all right?
yeah, I suspect you won't have that to your fingertips, Councillor Fuller.
Well, I know a couple of months ago it was just over £600,000. I don't know how much more it's but again, one of the issues that we have is that delays mean that data that we're using is becoming more and more outdated.
Fine. I think what I'm going to try and do is
Delay, councillor, but are you really
Thank
suggesting
thank
that
you,
will make
councillor
us
Spink.
harder
So I think I'm going to
data
try
out of date?
and draw this to a conclusion. You've heard my comments around
Yeah.
Greenfield sites. You've heard Councillor Spink's comments. I think Councillor Spink and I both, for different reasons, would like to see this delayed and not come before March full council. But would like to see a committee view. So for different reasons, Councillor Spink and I would like to see more work done on this and not come before the March full council.
I agree. We're not, the reasons aren't entirely different in the sense that I also am concerned about unnecessary development on Greenfield. So
Can I ask whether the committee agree with that for any of the reasons that have been commented on today? So if it's a proposal from Councillor Spink that it be delayed and not considered at the March meeting because there's more work to be done on it, I agree with that. I second that. How do the committee feel? All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? In which case that proposal is not carried. I'm not sure there's anything more to be done on this as a committee. There's still obviously plenty of opportunity, Councillor Spink, for you and I and others to talk with fellow councillors. Thank you very much.
Chairman, I'm very happy to meet with you to discuss those concerns.
Fine, thank you.
ASAP, really.
Thank you. I'm mindful of time. We've got a few more items to go, some of them fairly substantial. So item number 8, pre-decision scrutiny.
Yeah, forgive me, but is any recommendation, do we have any the specific matters that I referred to on page 77 and then over to page 78? Do we have any recommendation on those? That is, the housing, council-owned housing sites should be used for social rented, socially affordable homes for rent. A time limit on without signing off 106 agreements. And I think that was all I mentioned. But I don't know if we have any view on that. I'd ask a recommendation that further consideration be given to incorporate those matters in the island plan.
I think Councillor Spink, the question I asked was, does the committee agree to a delay to include any of those things? And it seemed to be no.
I'm not sure that it would cause a delay, would it?
Fine. So Councillor Spink has referred to some items. I'm supportive of those additions being made. Can I take a vote on that? Okay. Councillor Fuller, they'll be minuted. I think you heard them. There are some views from the committee which aren't related to delay, but are in relation to well, the items that have been referred to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. Item number 8, pre-decision scrutiny, disposal of the former Yarmouth Primary School, pages 3, 4, 7. So we made a particular request before this item came to scrutiny that the issue around confidentiality be dealt with very cautiously and restrictively, meaning that we got to see as much of the detail as possible. And on those confidential items, we still got to understand some of the circumstances. In my own view, this report is a very good report in the way it deals with the issue of confidentiality. Although the preferred bidder, and indeed none of the bidders, are referred to in name, we do have a very useful table at paragraph 10, which sets out the nature of each of the bidders and what they intended to do with the site. You know, bid A, boatyard, bid B, education, etc. So I think if this is the way it's going to be dealt with in the future, that is to be welcomed and much improved on the previous report relating to Kingston Marine and others. So on the issue of confidentiality, I think this deals with it very, very well. I have no particular comments to make on the preferred bidder, other than it seems sensible. I can see why the that decision is likely to be made. Councillor Quirk.
Support the decision, and I agree with you that this is a much better way of dealing with the confidential material, because it actually explains what is going on rather than just hiding everything. On page 353, section 21, the bidder is providing the land with planning permission for someone else to build the affordable houses. And they're saying the council or someone else. Is there someone else identified here in advance, or is it page 353, item 21, first paragraph, second sentence? The bidder proposes to transfer the land with planning permission for affordable housing units. They're suggesting to the council, or the council could nominate someone else. If it's coming to the council, are we going to need to spend the money that we've got on building those units? And if it's someone else, are they going to have input to what is designed? Because the planning permission has got to be for something that a housing association can actually afford to buy.
And thank you. Andrew Jenkins has appeared on screen. Can I hand over to you?
Thank you. I'm very happy to answer any questions. It's very early days with how we're going to be able to deal with this particular point, but the principal is very much agreed with the preferred bidder that they just want to make that land available for social or affordable housing. They're saying it's social rented. Because we couldn't speak with the preferred bidder prior to the report being published, because we didn't want to have those open discussions until this decision was made in principle. We couldn't sort of have those, discuss the details. So there is a lot to discuss there. That's why we referred in the report to heads of terms will be agreed. So that detail will be agreed with the preferred bidder if the principle is acceptable, and they will be enshrined in the heads of terms, which will be approved by the director and cabinet member. There's a few different ways that it could happen. The land could be retained by the Isle of Wight Council, so we wouldn't sell it as part of the freehold initially, so that we don't ever lose control of that bit of land. The bit of land likely to deliver the housing is along the frontage of Mill Road, so the rest of the site is very much in the flood zone and isn't suitable for housing. So we know roughly the bit of area that is going to be suitable for housing, if at all. We'll ask the preferred bidder to deal with the planning application for the whole site, and if that area of land on Mill Lane is successful in obtaining planning permission for some social housing, then we'll discuss about the mechanics of how that land will transfer or not to an RP or to the council. I think the council very much has an appetite to build that land out if possible, but we don't know about budgets and the ability to deliver. So it's a new thing for the council to be looking at doing. But certainly the principle is to keep the land within the council's control if at all possible. There's just a lot of work to do between now, having agreed that in principle, and the end result, if that helps.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
Yeah, supplementary to that, on page 358, paragraphs 54 and 55, one says that the council, if the council chooses not to sell the site and instead retains it and reconsiders its future, there will be a shortfall in funding which has already been allocated. So that sort of doesn't quite tie in with what we just heard. And then it says there's a risk regarding the costs associated with the variation of the playing field covenants to be funded, which could be more than the £400,000.
Yes.
We seem to be spending the money 3 times.
Could you? I've actually got the report up with the paragraph numbers in the, could you mention the paragraph numbers if that's okay? Because I haven't opened the report via the link from the report, which I can do if that's easier. So my page numbers are not tallying with what you're referring to. Do you have the paragraph number from the report itself? Is it
Paragraph
presented differently?
54 and 55.
Thank you. 54 and 55. So 54 under evaluation. The council is satisfied that it has undertaken a thorough marketing and
My paragraph 54 is before that. I think you're reading paragraph 58.
Okay, sorry, I seem to have, so the one I've submitted for some reason is different. So
It's count back 4 paragraphs before evaluation.
1,
It starts
2,
in
3,
addition
4.
the funding agreement.
Okay, thank you. In addition, the funding agreement for the new primary school. Okay, so sorry, the question on that paragraph again, if you wouldn't mind.
So about halfway down, it says,
Yes.
if the council chooses not to sell the site, then instead retains it, and that paragraph, that sentence there.
And can reconsider its future use, there would be a shortfall.
That we're going to get for
Yes.
this,
Yes.
but we're getting them to buy it and pay it back, but we're keeping up. I don't quite understand how that's working.
So that is because the council made £575,000, the figure just a couple of lines above, available to invest in the new Freshwater and Yarmouth Primary School. That was a council contribution, and it was made on the basis that when the former Yarmouth Primary School site was sold, that the council's corporate pot would be reimbursed the £400,000. So we're expecting £400,000 to go back into the council's budget when we sell this site. So that's just stating that if we choose not to sell the site, which is option 4, for some reason, then that £400,000 that the council is expecting to be returned to the corporate pot won't be returned. So there'll be a shortfall to the council's budget.
I understand that. I got that.
Okay. Okay.
What it's saying is that the that £400,000 has been allocated. So, i.e., we're going to spend it somewhere else. We're assuming we're going to get it. That's what allocated generally means.
Sure.
In the next paragraph, the following paragraph, we say
Yes.
that it may actually cost that money in order to get the covenants removed. So if we've allocated it to something else and we're going to spend it on the covenants,
Okay, so the covenants, yeah, could be nothing. It could be very little. It could be £1, or it could be anything between, just pulling figures out the air. It's not going to be 400,000. I don't really want to speak in a public forum, if that's okay, what we think the figures might be, because we're obviously about to start negotiating with the Crown Estate, but it's relatively small. We've got potentially a capital receipt of 435,000 coming in. We know we need to return £400,000 to the corporate pot because that's already been allocated. So there's £35,000 remaining, which we are hoping will cover the ancillary costs left with the disposal, like legal fees, paying the marketing agent, etc., and the cost of the Crown Estate covenants. So the reason we have to highlight it as a risk is because we haven't done that negotiation yet with the Crown Estate. We don't actually know what that cost is going to be. So we can't hand on heart say the £35,000 remaining of the gross capital receipt will be enough to fund it. So it's just flagging a risk that there may be some cost outside of that remaining £35,000 that we might need to find from elsewhere. But the budget accountant for education is happy that that money can be taken from the education ex-school sites budget if needed.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No. In which case, what committee notes the report? Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Item number 9, pre-decision scrutiny, Cowes Medina Crossing, formerly known as the Floating Bridge. That came up to this meeting, this committee, just a few weeks ago, so I don't want to re-examine the report. We had a very full meeting examining the report, very good report last time, but we do now have recommendations to Cabinet. There are a couple of items on it that I want to comment on, and is there anything else that anyone would like to say on that? Or I can kick off. I can kick off if I can find the page. 369, is it? So I think for me, I said it at the last meeting. The single biggest known unknown at the moment seems to be the chain depth issue. And the report has identified that that changed because of the Cowes Harbour Commission's stipulations at the time that Floating Bridge 6 came into commission or thereabouts. And the report, and I accept it's not a report on a design of a new floating bridge, but it does make it very clear it's been unable to ascertain that there is a vessel, a designer vessel that could be implemented with the current chain depth restrictions that wouldn't require a push boat. So it seems to me that is the first and most pressing issue, is to have that conversation with the Cowes Harbour Commission. I don't know who has it. I suspect the council, but maybe it's a third party, to see whether there's any room for negotiation on that. Because if there's not, at the moment, there seems to be a big question mark over whether there is a vessel that can be designed without a push boat because of the chain restrictions. And I think my second comment related to the potential proposal for the Cabinet to move ahead with another report, a strategy, spending, was it 350,000 on it, in order to, and I struggling to quote the words, but it's a scoping document effectively for what a new bridge might look like, and a feasibility study. And my concern is that if that document is a detailed document, and I suspect it would be for around 350,000, that it's then used to tender for a new designer and builder. And you've got the problem we have with the last bridge is that you're specifying some details in a tender to someone who you're going to ask to go out and build a new vessel. And you're going to have that tension there if things go wrong between the specification that we tendered through a £350,000 tender and the designer builder who goes and builds based on that specification. So my question is whether we really need an intermediary step from here, or when the Cabinet decides to push the button, it simply goes out to a designer builder and says, deliver us a floating bridge. It's got to decide whether it wants it to be a lease agreement or whether it wants it to be a take it from A to B and you do it, or whether you want the council to buy that vessel. But I do worry that if we have a process in the middle, which is a £350,000 report, that might be used in the future if the builder fails to build us another good vessel as an excuse that the council's commission specification got it wrong. That's my concern. Councillor Love.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely, 100% agree with you. Spending 350,000, I don't know where that's come from, by the way, that particular report. But to suggest that we spend £350,000 on a report when we've spent 7 years doing all kinds of different things, we know what did work, which was the previous floating bridge. Yes, accepting the chain issues. What we should be doing is getting somebody, as you've already suggested, Chair, to design something that will work and to give them the responsibilities for doing the research to deliver and do that, rather than taking on the responsibility ourselves, which sounds absolutely ludicrous. A complete waste of, you ask somebody to build a floating bridge, you give them some reasonable expectations, so many cars, so many crossings an hour. You don't even specify whether it needs to be chain or not. You specify that that's what we want, is a floating bridge that will operate within the parameters, and then you let them design and do it. But you insist that a model, I mean, 3S, the report from 3S has been absolutely fantastic. It gives and lays out. So that's what you do. There's absolutely no reason. And the other thing is that, and I'm not frightened of saying this, having had 7 years of floating bridge, you know, we want the right people to design it, not officers' involvement, perhaps just to oversee the process and that's it. So with the right expertise to take on that sort of project and let them deliver the project as a whole, rather than us stick our finger in the water as what seems to have happened before and mess the whole thing up by setting a whole load of parameters, which quite frankly, so I support you 100%.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to anchor it in the references, it's paragraph 24 and paragraph 40 of the report. So paragraph 24 talks about the next steps being a tender for technical consultants. And 24D says to define an outcome specification for a vessel. I think that's the worry I have, is if we commission consultants to define the outcome specification and then use that in a tender, that document could become a problem. But it looks like, Mr. Rowland, you've got something to say.
When we talk about an outcome specification, we talk about high-level performance expectations, which is, as the 3S report advised as well, we're saying the number of crossings, the minimum number of crossings per hour. We're talking about levels of expectation on what we would charge for passengers and vehicles. So it's talking about fixing those sort of levels. So very, very high level performance specification, and how the detail, which was one of the problems with the last floating bridge, is that they did go too much into the detail. How long it would be, what it would be made of, what the engines would look like, etc., etc. This would be a very, very high level specification. Now, in order for us to get to that performance specification, we need support from technical experts to develop that specification. We need support from technical experts to do the proper financial and technical appraisal of what the options might be. And we also need to talk to industry to see out there who is interested in developing this potential vessel. Because at the moment, we've had conversations or third-party conversations about people that may be interested in developing such a vessel, but we haven't had any hard evidence or anybody coming to us and saying, yes, we can do this, and this is how we would do it. And that's part of this process that we're doing at the moment in order to develop a high-level technical performance specification that actually justifies the expenditure of millions of public money, millions of pounds of public money, to justify why we are going down a route of a new vessel. And that's the process we're going to follow with this report. It's about Treasury Green Book guidance and following that in order to get to a situation when we can then go out. We know what the preferred option is then. We then go out to procurement. You have to follow that process first before we actually get the proper details of what we're actually going out to procure. Is there a market for it? And what sort of performance specification are we expecting?
But thank you. I note that the tender talks about a report on legal and procurement details. I get that. I suppose the words that I thought was slightly confusing is that it refers to a technical and engineering options, which sounds like it's going to make recommendations about what the bridge should look like, whether it should have chains or no. Okay.
Well, just coming on to that, Chairman, one of the things it will look at is that chain depth issue, including the conversations with the harbour master about that practicalities of actually being able to achieve that, because that's a technical issue that is quite crucial to the operation of a new vessel moving forward. So yes, part of that will be technical issues. Also the technical issues of performance. Is it realistic, for example, to expect that vessel to move backwards and forwards at a minimum of 5 crossings an hour? It might be that someone comes forward and say, well, we could actually do 8 crossings an hour. It might be to people who say, given the constraints of that river, it might only be able to achieve what it's actually doing currently. So we do need to look at and talk to the industry about what the art of the possible is with in terms of a new vessel.
Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
I'm sorry, it's complete rubbish. We've had 7 years to do that. we've written in this document here, £350,000. You've just told the marketplace what they can charge, 350,000 by printing it. That's what people say. We want £350,000 for this technical report. You've told them what the price is. So we can't even negotiate around that. The point is, I'm sorry, this is our committee at the moment. Chair, the point is that the chain depths have been significant research over numbers of years. The Harbour Commission have got data upon data upon data of it. We are reinventing the book. I completely agree with your rationale from the beginning. We get on, we do it, we look at what's available locally, rather than drag this out for another whole 12 months of doing. I mean, will the public stand £350,000 worth of their money on yet another report? Well, I certainly won't. And they didn't like the fact of 60,000, never mind 350,000. It's ludicrous. Get on and give the people who know the job, as you have suggested. We say to somebody, build us a bridge there, go away and come back with the solutions. And then we ask all the questions. Will this do A, B, C, D, and E? Whatever that is, chain depth or everything else. I'm sorry, but I've lost all confidence in Isle of Wight Council's ability to build a bespoke vessel like this. This is what went wrong in the first place. And that's my view. And whether if you agree with it or not, give it to a proper professional development company who design the vessel, who construct the vessel, who take responsibility for its performance from that point onwards. It can still be in the ownership of Isle of Wight Council. That's the way to do it, rather than us trying to say, we're going to commission a report, so it does A, B, C, D, and we want to be sure of the river depths. No, we don't need to be assured of that. The people who build it need to be sure that that vessel will operate as we want it to on the river. That's the point, rather than coming from the other direction. Sorry, that's my...
Councillor Spink.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with Councillor Love. I can't now find it, but I had it last time this came before our committee, that there is somewhere in the report of 3S that they say exactly what Councillor Love is suggesting, namely that we cut out any further of the middleman, as it were. We decide on going on a company and ask them to design it and guarantee, as it were, that it will perform the function that we need. So surely, even if we do need a further report to show due diligence, it does not have to be a report that costs £300,000. It does seem to me that we could, first of all, get a quote and a specification from a company who can actually build the thing, and then we can do our due diligence on that. That would be my suggestion, rather than delaying it and spending £300,000 is a lot of money in the current climate.
I'm going to bring in, Councillor Jones-Evans, and then bring in Mr. Rowland. Yeah.
Thank you. So in the after Bridge 6 came into operation in 2017, I spent a lot of time that summer, much to my friends and family's chagrin, that I was spending too much time researching what had happened with Floating Bridge 6. And I came to the conclusion that there were a couple of things that did go wrong that may be helpful for us to reflect on now. I know we've had lots of reports over the years, but I think because one of our main consultants was an operator, I think that was one of the issues that we had. They didn't understand our river. They thought they could just put their lovely shiny floating bridge design, which was iconic, and you can see out the windows, up the river, and that's not appropriate for the Medina crossing, as we're now calling it. Understanding the river is absolutely, they've got to come first. The owner of there's a new Dartford ferry just before I think Floating Bridge 6 came in, and he spent a year looking at the tides and how the river worked before they went into the design stage. Understanding the river is absolutely imperative. So I think once that's been done, then everything flows from that. But you know, I think learn from the past, but we need to move quickly on this because meanwhile, we're not getting the service that we need. And the reason I was so interested, apart from it's a big council, you know, service and expenditure, and I'm interested in the process, as you heard earlier regarding our committees, it's a very interesting process that's done properly. But also, Floating Bridge is supposed to relieve traffic out of Newport Town Centre, and that was actually on the top specifications for Floating Bridge 6.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And I think the point that's being made is the council doesn't need to understand the river through commissioning a report. The people who design and build a new bridge need to, and the risk should be on them if they get it wrong. Yeah, Mr. Rowland, Councillor Spink, because I think it may be no. Go on, Mr. Rowland. You're looking keener.
Can I just come up? What we're looking at doing here is following good procurement practice for public procurement of a major project in millions of pounds. And this is why the process that we're recommending, which is based on the Treasury Green Book, which is based on good practice. What we can't do is just immediately find a contractor or someone we think we can build this vessel and go directly to them and say, can you build this vessel? Go ahead and do it. Public procurement doesn't work like that. You have to go through a proper process of technical legal evaluation in order to get value for money for we're probably looking at £3 to £5 million worth of investment in terms of what we own as an asset. And even if we give it to a design build operator as a license, we're still giving them a concession of high value to the council. And therefore we have to follow good practice in order to satisfy ourselves as a public body that we follow good practice.
Chair.
Is it not possible though to put together a proper tender process in order to deliver effectively what Floating Bridge 5 did, movement A to B of how many cars, and that your Green Book, your proper way of doing it is dealt with in that tender to go and deliver?
That's what we're saying within this document.
It looks like you're seeking to set out a tender for technical consultants to carry out basically a brief, and then you'll go out to tender to get it built. But why can't those things be one and the same? Why can't you now go straight out to tender, subject to a cabinet decision, to build a bridge that transports however many cars from A to B based on what Floating Bridge 5 did, i.e. before we got the bridge that doesn't work well?
Because we haven't spoken to the industry about what the art of the possible is commercially. We haven't tested what the art of the possible is against the cost and the running of the current vessel. We haven't looked at that technical and legal feasibility of actually what that might look like before we actually go out to a tender process. And part of this process, which we need technical support on, is actually talking to industry about what the art of the possible is. And what the sort of financial, what does that look like financially as well? And coming back to consultants, that £350,000 is an outline figure, because the last thing we want to do is come back in 6 months' time and say, you know, we wanted 350,000, well now it's 400,000. However, of that 350,000, 100,000 of it is for internal capacity, because we don't have internal legal capacity at the moment, and we don't have internal project management capacity. We'd have to upgrade that in order to actually manage this programme, because officers don't have the capacity to do this additional work on top of the day-to-day job. So it's 100,000 for internal capacity, and it's potentially at a high figure, £250,000 for technical activity. It may be less than that, but what we didn't want to do is underprice it and then have to come back and say, can we have some more funding to actually finish the job?
I mean, obviously, you know, none of us probably in this room, but certainly on this committee are experts. I can see there might be a role for something in the middle there. But again, I go back to the caution that if the council then has a document that it committed, a very full document for 300,000 or thereabouts, that document, if there's something wrong with it, may end up being used in the future by someone who designs a floating bridge to say, well, your document that you tendered us on, you know, had a flaw in it. I think the last time it happened, the consultants made it very clear that it was specifying that what the bridge should be made out of and the length of it that was a problem. I think any set of parameters you put in place other than, can you just transport cars across there, please, and get it done, is always going to bring in a possibility that you're providers are going to blame the premise, the document you provided them in the beginning. But a risk, I think. Mr. Rowland and then Councillor Love.
I'll go back. It's producing an outcome specification. It's producing a performance specification that bidders then bid against. And it is not specifying what that vessel will look like, but we do need to have that industry inside view as to what the expectation would be when we do actually go out to tender.
Councillor Love.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't agree with you. You are absolutely miles away from, you can do a good procurement process which says, we would like to procure you to tender for a floating bridge across the river. That includes having a look at all of the specific needs that it needs to achieve and the technical issues involving the river itself. It all gets wrapped in without spending £350,000. And you know, I'm horrified. We're having to spend money on officer time to do this when this council's already bust. And so we spent, you know, in terms of finances, that's more money that we're having to take out of this to prop up a council department because we don't have the money to be able to operate things how we should. The point is that all of this has been done. It was done for Floating Bridge 6, so all of the specifications are there, what we want for the river. You just simply lift from that what is relevant. All of the technical stuff was delivered before for building Floating Bridge 6. It's there. Same for Floating Bridge 5, although I doubt that they'll be able to find very much of that detail. You go to a shipbuilder, you don't go to a shipbuilder, sorry, you say to the shipbuilders around the country, particularly prioritising, if at all possible, our local shipbuilders and say, we would like you to build a floating bridge that goes across there. We know there's lots of difficulties with it. We want you to have a look at the river. We want you to do all of the technical stuff and you to come back and be responsible for building the floating bridge. All this stuff about soft testing the market. What a lot of nonsense. Quite harmful. You've got shipbuilders there who either will or will not bid for it. It's as simple as that. Why would we want to soft test the market? Good God.
Councillor Quirk and then Councillor Spink.
No wonder it costs us a fortune to do everything if this is what we have to go through.
The floating bridge has proved to be a very high risk business over the last 7 years. The way of moving forward with the minimum risk to me looks like the design, build, own and operate model. That you actually give someone a license and they take all the responsibility. Now that may reduce our income, but it also may reduce our risk to virtually zero. And the income over the last few years, I suspect, has been largely taken up with the actually making the boat operate. So I think Cabinet needs to have a serious review of how we approach this. Okay, I'm a conservative, so I approve of private enterprise, but the private enterprise usually assesses their risks very well, and will you know, if you can get someone who's going to do the whole caboodle, and if they won't, that raises a real big question mark about whether it's actually possible to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Spink.
The reference that I was looking for is page 399 of the bundle, paragraph 6.3.2, and it really reiterates what Councillor Quirk has just said. Leasing of a vessel or sale of license to design, build, own and operate. And it says, one means of avoiding additional Isle of Wight Council expenditure is to lease from, and then it goes on, a designer builder replacement vessel designed and constructed to achieve Isle of Wight Council specified performance requirements. Now, the specified performance requirements, my understanding from this report are, you know, simply how many deliveries do we want to do a day, or how many voyages do we want to do a day, etc. And the whole risk is then taken by the lessee. Now, it seems to me that any further report that we need would therefore be very, very brief and not very expensive if we chose that option, the leasing option.
Yeah, again, trying to sum up a view of this committee. So there are recommendations on page 371, recommendations 5 to 7, 7 being A to F. I would take it that the committee is supportive of 5 and 6 at the least, that the Cabinet approve the continued management model of the floating bridge, because it's all we've got at the moment, and that it implements the recommended operational efficiencies set out in the operational review report. And that's got some useful recommendations how you can maximise efficiency even out of the current vessel. But I'm sensing, it's certainly my view, and I'm sensing there's a majority view over number 7, Commissioner a River Medina crossing strategy. That will, A to F, I won't read it out. I think this committee has some reservations about a substantial additional report done by consultants that isn't simply part of design and build this vessel, please. And I think this committee would recommend that as much risk, ideally all risk, gets transferred out to the designer, builder, and potentially operator of whatever future vessel we might have. And I think the more substantial a further report is, the more likely it is to muddy the water over risk. Can I take that as a comment? It's comment to Cabinet, in fact, because it's Cabinet paper. And thank you, Councillor Stevens, for coming to replace Councillor Jordan. Before I take a final lot of heads, Mr. Rowland.
Can I just add that the recommendations, item 7, which is the recommendations that we put forward in this Cabinet report, have been recommended also by the consultancy 3S that provided the report previously, and 3S being the engineering design consultants of large major projects in the UK, also cognizant of the way that we need to manage public money. So that I'm recommending as an officer that we need to go through a proper process to ensure we get value for money from the public purse. And that's why I'm recommending these options. I'm not trying, if there was a way to cut corners and to get straight to the point that you're trying to make here as a committee, I would follow that course of action. But as an officer, it's incumbent on me to advise you that that is not following proper procedure and proper process to ensure we get value for money for the public purse.
I don't think we're sort of directly disagreeing with your recommendation here. I think it's more adding a rather large dollop of caution on the way it's done and possibly the size of it, the magnitude of what you're envisaging. Ultimately, it's obviously for Cabinet to decide, not this committee, and for you to advise and convince them. But I think we'd heap on as much caution as possible over the scope and size of that next process that sits between just going out to tender to design and build this vessel. So without particularly going against your advice, I think the comment from this committee is to scope it down as to something as small as you will tolerate in your role. And of course the Cabinet's got a tricky decision to make. Councillor Stevens, last word, I think.
I'd just like to say thank you to the Scrutiny Committee members that have brought forward some of the areas of concern. Personally, and until we actually discuss and debate this in Cabinet, you've highlighted some of my concerns, which once again I'll be taken forward into Cabinet in a few days' time. I trust that we will have your recommendations or your views and your thoughts on this paper, because quite honestly it's something that really we should be looking at. Floating Bridge 6 was an opportunity for a Medina crossing, and unfortunately because of various failures it didn't produce what the Isle of Wight Council, indeed what the residents of the Isle of Wight and visitors required. We don't want to go down that route again.
what we want to do is take on board the sensible suggestions that you've made, look at the recommendation, talk with the officers prior to the cabinet meeting and take some things forward. It's probably Councillor Jordan trying to close me down. But I take on board what you've said, and I know my cabinet colleagues have done and will do. But when we approach this paper at the meeting, okay. So thank you very much indeed. I would like to say an apology for my late arrival. I did want to come in, but I knew that we had officers adequate for the Yarmouth Primary School site. But if anyone wants to see me after the meeting, or it's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can we leave it there? Can we?
I just think we need to emphasise what Councillor Spink was saying about the leasing or design, build, own and operate models for the future, because they minimise the risk. And there's a lot of risk in this, and potential for earnings is there, but at a high risk of failure.
I think we've captured that in our comments. I'm mindful of time. I think we're going over our ground. Go on, Councillor Love.
I would just like to say that the report from 3S has been absolutely eye-opening and a very strong document to help the council. And I would like to see their continued, because they give me confidence. I don't know about other people, but they've given me a lot of confidence in the report. I'd like to see them involved with the process because of their reputation, because of the work that they've actually produced. So one of the things that I would like to recommend to Cabinet is that we keep them on board as advisors in some capacity. That's for others to decide. But I think that their report has given me such a lot of confidence and reassurance of where we're going. So I'd like to recommend that, if that's at all possible, that 3S are maintained as part of the continuing development of this project moving forward.
Yeah, I suspect we can't sort of recommend anyone is sort of engaged for a new aspect of this because that's subject to tender. But I take it there's still communication with them there. I mean, they produced the report. Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, 3S have indicated that they can support us in this process, but they won't do the detail that we're actually expecting to be done. 3S, as I said before, 3S actually helped us produce those recommendations to take this forward further. But they said that given that they're retired, given that they have other projects to follow, they are only prepared to provide a certain amount of advice on this next stage.
Thank you. Moving on, item number 11, scrutiny annual report. There it is. It's been circulated. It's been written.
Sorry, Chair, did we actually agree that? I don't know if we've actually, that we're going with 5 and 6.
So I think,
Sorry.
sorry, no, fine. I didn't make it clear. Perhaps I did just check.
I wasn't just sure that.
No, I checked with the officers to my side. So I think we're recommending, we agree with 5 and 6. With 7, we're noting our concern, and I don't want to paraphrase myself, but over a large project now that sits in between, just getting on with it. That was paraphrasing. Right. Item number 11, scrutiny annual report, which you've got in front of you. And can I just thank Scrutiny Officer Melanie White for helping all scrutiny chairs to put that together. And I'd like to, it seems an appropriate time to give my thanks to you and Megan for all your support. For the scrutiny committees, the support you give and the work you do behind the scenes, which I think a lot of councillors don't realise how much goes into it. Thank you.
And if I, as Vice Chair, could simply support that view. Thank you.
Are there any comments to make on it? I don't feel there has to be. Councillor Jones Evans.
I'm eager to get on your committee, aren't I? It's clearly, Chair, but thank you for indulging me again. Yeah, I think the focus for scrutiny, those bullet points are really quite interesting. Public attendance, yeah, absolutely, because there's some really interesting stuff that's discussed here, and a lot of work producing the reports, and it's really helpful to get questions, I think. That's the whole point of scrutiny. But I think also I'm like, questioning what's happened with members coming. We used to get a lot of members come to scrutiny committees over the years. We had the whole line of us along there when I was the last administration and previous as well. So I just wonder what's happened with engagement from members as well. I think that's really important because having the opportunity once a month to ask questions on the work of the council as a member and not necessarily as a cabinet member or a member of the committee, I think it's absolutely invaluable. And I do kind of wonder, like, if people are interested in this, are they really going to be interested in a committee system? Given we were actually in court this morning.
Don't go back there, Councillor Jones Evans.
We were in court this morning at one, which has
I-
caused a lot of problems.
I have to say, I've criticised members of the cabinet for being absent in the past, but generally speaking, the last few meetings, I think attendance has been quite good, and I do appreciate if a cabinet member can't sit through the entire meeting if they've got other things to do and their item has been done. But Councillor Jones Evans, I think you get the gold star amongst cabinet for attendance at corporate scrutiny. Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to echo that as well. And as a new councillor, it's been really, really helpful to help me learn because I sort of see a little bit of everything. So it's like a crash course in the council. I also wanted to just highlight the scrutiny data. I think is really interesting is that our committee has the highest interactions on the ModGov page. I always access my papers on there, so maybe it's me doing it all over again. But I mean, this year, last year, 2,489 compared to the others, which were below 1,000. So we're quite popular, obviously.
Thank you. I should also add my appreciation to senior officers who always turn out in good numbers, and particularly when there's an agenda item here. And if they can't be here in person, they're invariably on screen. So thank you very much. Anything else? Any more back slapping we want to do? No. Thank you, committee, for your commitment over the last year. It may be, of course, our penultimate scrutiny meeting ever if the committee system plans go through in May. Which takes me on to the final item, number 12, members' question time. Councillor Spink.
I have one very brief question. That is this, that I endorse the chair's comments about the report for Yarmouth School, and confidentiality is a bit of a bugbear of mine. So I was pleased to see a properly structured report. The one thing that I am a little concerned about is that it was confidential to cabinet, confidential to this committee, and we're not to see the identity, understandably, but it was the subject of a press report where the identity, all the identities, certainly of some of the bidders, were disclosed. And I wonder if there's anyone on the council who can explain how that occurred, that it's confidential to corporate scrutiny, but not to the press.
I mean, obviously, I don't know the answer, and I know you weren't asking me, Councillor Spink, but I think the preferred bidder had done a public a public meeting, had they not, as part of the process. So
yeah, but the outcome was the outcome, and the preferred bidder's identity was obviously leaked to the press, although it was supposed to be confidential for us. I see.
It would probably be irregular to ask a member of the press to give a comment, but there seems to be a shake of a head. It might be an easy conversation to have as soon as this meeting finishes.
Certainly.
Yeah. There was just a small one from me, Mr. Rowan. Is there a very brief update you could give on the Ryde Town Board? I did see the papers that that have been published for full council, and they seem fairly straightforward to me, but a very brief outline if you're happy to. Sorry, this is the next steps and composition of the Ryde Town Board.
Yeah. So it's a full council report, and most of the recommendations in that report are for noting. So effectively, it's setting out the Ryde Town Board, the focus of the Ryde Town Board, what it's involved with, how we will get together with the committee, the town board itself. We have appointed a chairman, Stephen Holbrook. But when I say we've appointed the chair, it was a group of people, including the Police and Crime Commissioner, representative Rye Town Council, representative Isle of Wight Council, and with support from Solar Partners in that recruitment process. So a chap called Stephen Holbrook, he's the current chairman of the Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce, and he comes with it with a lot of industry experience, but also a lot of industry experience coming from Ryde, living on the island, and a lot of voluntary experience and work as well. So I think we've got quite a good, well qualified chairman. The chairman will then work with us to recruit people to the board. There are some fixed members of the board. So the MP is the first one, the Police and Crime Commissioner or representative from the crime area, sort of agencies, 2 representatives from the Isle of Wight Council, and a representative from Ryde Town Council. We're looking at a board as a minimum of 12. So we were looking at 5 or 6 representatives that have been prescribed by government, and then the other representatives will be people who represent Ryde, who've got that sort of experience of project delivery and but also that community spirit as well in terms of what we're looking for on the board. There was quite a specification that there wasn't necessarily to be a political bias within the board itself. Now, obviously, by the very nature of some of the appointments, they're political appointments, but the idea of the board from the government is that it's to remain apolitical and it's about developing Ryde itself. So the first step is to get the board in place by the 1st of April. And then the next step is to have a town plan for the government by the 1st of August. So it's quite a significant ask and it's quite a significant task to achieve. One of the things I would say is that having looked at Ryde's town plan and having looked at the strategy that Ryde have produced, they have a series of projects that have gone through public consultation in Ryde and are arguably ready to be put forward as part of the projects that go forward as part of the plan. And by using the criteria that was applied to select those projects, you can use similar criteria for any other projects that might want to be put forward for that process. But given the timescales and given the need to get something forward by August, it's quite an ask in terms of new projects and those new projects being sustainable in the long term.
Thank you. Can I just ask, there were 3 other roles advertised, weren't there? A deputy chair and 2 other members. You've had hopefully good applications for those, and
we've had a
or
number
have you appointed? Maybe
we've had a number of applications for that. We met the chairman yesterday, the leader and myself, and Ryde Town Council met the chairman yesterday. He is then having a think about the applications that have come forward, and he's also looking potentially to see whether anybody else from the chamber who has a Ryde link to be involved in it as well. So there'll be a series of selection process just to ensure that the board is taken forward. It's not a board, although the project is 10 years, it's not a board that will be expected necessarily to be the same over that 10-year period. And there will be a process of renewal, and there will obviously be a process of people's own choices about whether they want to remain on the board, and they're able to give the time to deliver. But the main focus is a set of criteria which we would like people to be achieve in order to be on the board. One of them is being that sort of experience of business and experience of delivery. The other one is that sort of commitment to the town and the links to the town. The other one is the links to and a record of public service themselves as well. So there's 3 clear criteria there, possibly another 2 that could be developed, and that will be the basis on which the board members will be made up.
Thank you. Councillor Redrop, was it related to the town board? Yeah, Councillor Redrop.
Hi, thank you, Chair. My question is, on that topic, is there, in the appointments, are there any considerations for diversity and representation, gender parity, and also age groups as well to represent the town? Thank you.
The chairman's very keen to make sure that diversity is there, particularly in gender. And I think that will be one of the considerations when he's looking for people that want to be on the board. As we're in a public forum, anybody else that wants to apply to be on the board, it's quite short notice, but anybody wants to put their sort of application through, they're welcome to do that either through me or through the new chairman. And they will be considered by the chairman in terms of his decision as to who will be on the board, together with the other board members as well. So Donna Jones, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner, she's still involved in that process, as is the leader of Isle of Wight Council, as is the MP.
If I may come in, I think Councillor Frederick, you're asking, I think if I understand the question, you're asking more, is it in the terms of reference? Is it embedded rather than just up to the chairman whether he thinks it's a good thing? I think that's what she's asking, Mr. Rowland.
I don't think it's not in the terms of reference, and it's not something that's specified by the government guidance, but it is something that we will be adopting as part of the considerations of the recruitment.
Yeah, so without wanting to go into this too deeply, I mean, it's not been set up by statute, but I mean, does it have the same commitments and responsibilities as a public body? There must be some sort of overriding requirement to diversity. Go on, yes,
Not by my understanding. I mean, in terms of a public body, it's anchored to the council, as we are the responsible body for the funding, but the government is very keen for it to be independent as much as possible.
Important, although we are the Isle of Wight Council is the accountable body as far as finance goes. I would like to see, as your questions, that we have our values, we have equality and diversity right through us like a stick of rock. Now the Isle of Wight Council would like to see that be actually not just down to the chair, but actually embedded into the terms of reference. I think it's really important.
I quite wanted this to be a main agenda item on scrutiny today, but I do wonder whether there's an opportunity to put it on the agenda for May, just to see how it's coming along and how it's being put together. I feel there's such a wide remit without detail from government. That's not criticism of the council, that it would probably be a good idea that scrutiny committee looks at the way it's being put together. And May might be quite good timing, because there will still be time between May and August to, affect change. Does that work? Yeah. Councillor Love. Councillor Cook, did you want to make comment on that point? Yeah, please.
Yeah, related to terms of reference, and I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but the two Isle of Wight Council members will be selected at full council, I believe. Would they necessarily have to be RIDE councillors, or is it open to anyone?
No, but I think thinking about RIDE, the RIDE connection is, or the area of RIDE is probably a preferred option. Not necessarily, but that I think the RIDE connection needs to be important, really. As I said before, it's effectively meant to be an independent body that has RIDE's interests at heart, and the only connection that we should have as a council is the accountable body status that we have. That the actual board itself, the government really want to encourage them to be independent and to be thinking independently.
Yeah, it feels that the Isle of Wight Council is sort of giving birth to this thing, and it will go off and fly and be its own entity. But the giving birth process is where we can make sure that it's, done well and properly. What are we, the midwives, maybe? Councillor Love.
So I'm not sure that we haven't given birth tonight, to be honest, but Chair, I just want to say a couple of things that just kind of niggle me. I want to say thank you, because you have been a good chair in the chair. I personally am against this being one of the very last scrutiny meetings, because I believe that the scrutiny system gives us one place where we can all come together. Whether it produces any volcanic eruptions of change, so to say, is debatable or not. But the point is, it gives us the opportunity to come here, sit and debate and be with each other and talk through issues, or sometimes shout at each other when perhaps we shouldn't. But it gives us that opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why I'm concerned about the new, without wishing to go backwards, committee system, because I actually think that scrutiny is a very valuable place for members of the public to see us exchanging different opinions and different, about things. I think it's really important. I would want to see this scrutiny, health scrutiny, continuing. Yeah, because I think that's. I know some people don't share that that sentiment with me, but I think it's really valuable for the general public to see that we're actually real people who can sit and argue and debate, and that democracy actually does come forward from that. But I want to say thank you, because I think you've done a really good job of chairing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love. That's very kind. Is there anything else, or can we go home? Let's go home. Thanks.